Question was, what is that? Variant invariant
Yeah.
linkage internationality orbit network thing,
Mm-hmm.
which is controlling every human being and controlling the entire world.
Yes.
What is that thing? Anything you say, that's also good. You take a book, you just like that pick up anything, any concept, any word, any event, any episode, any item, any event, any phenomenon. All of them can be beautifully explained by applying the invariant, variant, internationality linkage network. Uh, then time and logic we said, one more is to be told. That will not something that great, my dear friends, just language. And
Yes.
in our Geniuses program also, as I told you, the number one is creative language control, number two, creative analytic
Mm.
intellect, and third is freedom of mind. I mean, freedom. And we are achieving, we are combining all this at the same time. Of course, we talk about some mental traps.
Mm.
Now, what is the variant structure of language? What is the structure? What is the logic of a language? Let us talk. Or let us say, what are the variants of a language? Variants in a language.
Letters, words, sentences.
Variants of a language. One, letters, or what you call alphabets. Okay, letters. Letters is the correct word. Letters. Yeah. Second,
The
Word,
phonetics, the
Words.
sounds
Words.
attributed.
sound is a variant of what?
Language.
The physiological
Tone.
system actually.
No, no, no. Spoken language. Letters,
One more.
words. Then,
sentences.
correct?
Mm.
Sentences. That's all.
Mm.
Here, the entire network, huge spider, infinite kind of intertwined network of phenomenon created by language is because of what property of this variance? That invariant force achieved by the words. That's why, for example, in the Bible it was told, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was uttered by the God, and the Word was the flesh. Bible said word is flesh, flesh. In fact,
Uh-huh.
there is a point in that. Because the word can be written or uttered only by the work of the flesh, of the central nervous system, plus the vocal cord and things like that. So, words in, so language is nothing but words in, what is the in-between thing happens when letters become words? Oh,
Logic. No.
yeah, a certain logic of linkaging
Yeah.
only.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Of letters
Mm.
lead to the words. Agreed?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah. And then sentence a certain logic of linkaging of certain words to form
Mm. Yes.
sentences. And depending upon the logic of linkaging of several sentences, the
Mm-hmm.
integrity of a paragraph or an idea or a passage. All right,
Yes.
clear.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, sir. Clear. Mm-hmm.
This you already know in a different way. Now,
Mm-hmm.
genius, the difference between a genius and a non-genius is the extent of clarity, extent
Mm-hmm.
of depth, extent of height. I told you the other day. We are not, you are not classroom students, doctoral,
Mm-hmm.
postdoctoral, super guy in the top university in the world. You have to be creators. Only a creative searcher has gone into the deeper analytic, creative journey to reach the subatomic particle. Only the one who understood the complete details of the ways of a machine only can create a new machine or even a modification or an innovation on a machine. And entire modification or innovation or creation also is 100% of function or the ability to use the sword of violin.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can direct any creativity group in any subject in the world. I don't have to know it. I don't have to know rocket technology. I don't have to know robotics technology. I don't have to know artificial intelligence, but I can guide them. No doubt about that. Yeah. Because that is what is invariant, variant, intentionality, linkage, time, logic, network, reality of the universe. Every item man made is nothing but a variation of the natural process, variant, invariant, linkage structure. Whether it is an atom bomb or an AK-47 rifle or a mobile phone or internet or huge bridge or huge machine or whatsoever.
Mm.
And do you also in between see linkageable variants, Nitya, and non-linkageable variants? Certain variants
Mm.
just cannot be linkaged.
Yes.
Like your hand cannot be linkaged with the beating of a 5 kilogram hammer, whereas a piece of iron can. Your hand cannot be nailed onto a plank, but a photograph can be. See,
Yes.
what is the problem with mental illness? Coincidentally, certain two seemingly unlinkageable things get linkaged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at everything, Naveen.
Yes.
Yeah, mental illnesses, crimes,
Mm.
crimes.
Mm.
A person who has had no indication to the report of the neighborhood people and the parents of any so-called bad behaviors suddenly ends up killing a girl on the spot.
Mm.
New formation of linkages, new linkages being formed. What is all development? A little baby, the sperm linkages with the egg.
Mm.
Then so many chemicals and hormones get involved in the linkaging process, and that single fertilized ovum multiplies into
Mm.
trillion assemblage by certain logic or principles of linkaging,
Mm.
apparently driven by the so-called DNA or RNA of the human species, so that a so-called human embryo setting structure is evolved over 280 days of doing by the logic of various hormones and other organic process. And when that infant is born, other variants get linkaged. The mother, the breast of the mother, the sound of the mother, the touch of the mother, then the touch of the
Mm.
father, brother, sister, environment, coat, bed, cloth, food, so on and so forth. See everything moving in differential terrains of variance and linkages according to certain logic, for which your perception system must be an ongoing process, not a stationary thing standing somewhere and watching all these things to take photographs. You have to,
Mm.
like a videographer of the ongoing things, you have to move along with whatever is going on. Don't stay stationary after your PhD and your MTech and your job position and your maturity level and your self-image as if you are somebody there, sitting there to observe and make conclusions about things. The so-called leaders of nations, leaders of organizations, leaders of institutions, leaders of groups and families, leaders of work unit, wherever in whatsoever form, they just don't see the flow of variants getting linkaged with other variants by certain logic and uh, uh, in different orbits. They just don't see that they are all stationed to some historical past. They
Yes.
want the linkages of certain principles to maintain the status quo so that their life is comfortable. Yeah, these are all just the beginning statements. Coming back to so the variant invariant linkage intentionality network orbit of language.
Mm.
And where comes the factor of time in language? Yeah, come on.
Time itself is a reason why language exists because
That's a very beautiful statement.
yeah.
But can you explain? You have a point, Mantra Rishika, there. We have a very critical point, but you have to say that. This again very important for you. Your reflection, your engine of attention will capture the tip of the iceberg of an explanation.
A sentence can be made only through time.
What? What? Once again, louder, please.
A sentence can be made only through time.
Made. In which way?
Uttered.
Made by talking or made by
Through
writing?
Either way.
both.
Both.
Yeah, of course. Exactly. That means what? Language exists only in time? It's at a
Mm-hmm.
deeper particle level. Language exists in time only. But our perceptions, our so-called memories about the printed words we saw here and there, and the signboards and the books and here and there,
It's reinforced.
memories about uttered words, of course, of your name, of your background, of that describe yourself, your self-image, your social position, your personal history. All these names are existing in time also. Which time?
Mm-hmm.
Ongoing time of your internal consciousness.
Yeah.
Who told you to maintain it?
Mm-hmm.
Who told you? It is already recorded there. Okay, it is there. But how come some of them are taking active roles in the ongoing language processing of the Maya, so-called wherever? Language does not exist in the printed books. There are only records of language. The live language, the true existent, variant, invariant, intelligent lives only in ongoing time. Your attention is existing. Your entire body, your entire so-called mind, your intellect process of the intellect and intelligent spirit exists right now only. Now only. Trained to continue, to contain, to recollect. This is your mother, this is your father, this is your house, this is your cloth, this is your food, this is your plate, this is your bed, this is your name.
Mm-hmm.
And everything else is linkaged finally to that invariant center of the name.
Mm-hmm.
Invariant center of the name. All these personal histories and everything is finally, of course, that's why after so many years of reflection, somebody changes the name. This is now this boat record, whatever maybe people know. This name is deleted and some new name comes. And that new name cannot linkage with the existing or the past history of variance in according to its logic. That logics become all the logic gets a shake, like the pillars are shaking. Then of course a new variance and its intentionalities and logic of understanding about the mysteries of wonders of existence have been formed, and the new name take ownership of that. Like married man or a married woman, a general manager, senior manager, vice president, all these socially given role positions are controlling your network of variants and linkages and intentionalities. But the you, to what extent the you is deciding what all variants I would choose, what all logic I will apply to connect, to linkage the variants. All the drawings
Yes.
you have heard from the interactions in this program, to what
Mm-hmm.
extent those knowings, the variants of those insights are getting linkaged with that operating you. Is it that operating you is located some 20 years back? Is that operating you is sitting somewhere behind and hiding and policing and not able to incorporate this variance into active linkage? There is no logic. All right. Now let's be a little more another scene. The logic of linkaging words. For some Mandrashiga linkage the main writings. So that was one logic. So there must be a logic in linkaging words. Then only, then only,
Sentence can be formed.
Hence,
then only, then only the intentionality or intent will
Yeah.
be transmitted.
Mhm.
So the other day we experiment the other that remember you
Mhm.
changed we of words the logic able you were to connect jumbled s- chord so jumbled words meanings into comprehension because mind you in a process you did to unwind words the logic of. Only then could get you meaning the of the connections illogical, the words of. The point get you.
Yes, sir.
Now a question so how I. There is why words linked a by logic. It is why wrong.
why it is wrong.
Right you are, you said when it is that
Intentionality.
intentionality connected get after doing your reprocessing of words wrongly connected. You only do reprocessing, you got it. So intentionality is conveyed. Then why there should be a logic? Why there is an erratic logic? Nobody makes it, but this is for you to understand that there is a logic of linkaging the words. Why that logic? What is wrong with name is my Prasad Sundararajan?
So
Or
that
why when you press the keys of a piano, when there is an out of pitch sound, you can know it. A certain key or certain sound become out of pitch meaning out of alignment based on the sounds existed prior to that. And of course, subsequently, the other sounds that exist after that. There is a, or what is the linkage of that logic? Or with what that logic is linkaged? Now the question is made a little more clear. That logic is linkaged with something in you also. That is why. When a certain key sound is perceived out of pitch by almost anybody, hmm, there is an error there, people say, or anybody can say, because that sound setting, meaning certain sound coming after a certain sound, does not abide by a certain logic existing where? Inside you, inside the human entity.
Yes.
So there is an inherent logic in the body movements or body process or the mental process or the intellect process or the intelligence process or the spiritual process in the human entity.
So,
Right.
Now the question is very straight away asked, can you identify the logic of that human entity, your own internal process? If you can identify the logical errors of syntax structure, I mean syntax,
Right.
anybody on the road can identify a wrong syntax of a language uttered or a sentence uttered. Almost anybody can identify an out of pitch sound when you press the keys of a musical instrument.
mm,
Why that anybody? What is in that anybody on the road? What is that? What aspect is that? What it is? It must be an invariant. It is an invariant. That's why it is able to identify the problems of the variation or
Yes.
variant. Get the point, Nitya?
yes,
Yeah. When you are making different designs of a cup, certain invariant is not agreeing with you. So you demolish it and you make another cup.
mm,
Similarly, there is an invariant that judges the errors of simple errors of language, simple errors of other structures like a poorly built a table or chair or pencil, or a poorly structured song, sounds, etc., etc. What is that logic? Is it the same? Is it the same logic that
Yeah.
helps enables a person to identify an out of pitch note,
Mm.
an out of pitch word linkaging, or an out of design table,
mm,
or an
Yeah.
out of design house, or an out of design cloth, or an out of design whatever?
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, is it learning?
Ah.
So it's a
No, no,
nature.
no. No, learning enables certain logic. You can understand the errors in mathematics, engineering, design, machine design, etc. Agreed. That is again a logic. All education is about a logic. Logic of diagnosing an illness, logic of diagnosing a machine, logic of diagnosing a law and order issue, etc., etc. Here we are talking about that inherent logic by which the natural human processes or events and episodes are identified for its not okayness.
Mm.
That's what I said. You don't need any training to identify an out of pitch sound when you press buttons of a piano or keyboard, Nitya.
Yes, sir.
Anybody can.
Yes.
Sir, I don't think anybody can do that. I don't think I'll be able to identify an out of pitch sound on a normal this thing.
No, 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 you can. You're imagining. You can. No doubt about that.
Even for that
There is
matter,
a piano here. There is a piano here right now. I can make you do that, but I have to take all these things to the piano.
for instance, sir, a first standard student will not be able to identify a wrong sentence or a wrongly structured
No,
sentence.
that is not a
Right.
matter of our context here.
Mm.
When you say someone who is judging logical error in sentence is the one who is very good. Very, I mean, he knows that language. That is why.
Yeah. That is required. First and information is required.
So then it is not something natural then. It is something trained then.
Which one is strange?
Language.
Yeah.
Then music is also strange. The structure of a table is so strange.
Unless you know what a table
Strange.
is, then that
For
is not.
example,
No,
for
no, no.
example,
Yeah.
you give food to a little baby. Okay,
Mm.
let us say 2-year-old baby, and
Okay.
you give a large spoon, larger than the plate.
Mm.
Will you? And if you give it to the child, will immediately. I mean, child will definitely show its disinterest. It won't be able to do anything, and it will manifest all kinds of discomfort. No doubt. That discomfort is the point. That pleasure principle, pleasure pain principle is operating there.
Mm.
Using that logic, for example, how do parents try to control children shouting at them? A sudden variation of pitch or sudden loudness. There is a logic, that logic. why the child is able to judge a certain expression of the mother and it will automatically cry. You don't need any training. At that level of the child.
But what about the other languages that I don't know? So
We are
suppose
talking about the
French,
languages you
German,
know.
yeah,
First you say when you say the languages you know, because when the other language you don't comprehend anything.
yeah.
Okay. For example, anyone may comprehend the illogical structure, linkaging of legs on a wooden plank
Hmm.
because it won't stand. But
Yeah,
anyone may not be able to identify the illogical structure of an automobile or a highly advanced radio, electronic
yeah,
machine,
yes,
etc.
sir. Space technology,
Yeah.
others.
Where is the invariant of that logic? You can say that. You can give an answer. Where is that invariant in that human entity by which this kind of illogical linkages are identified? Try for some possible probable linkages of responses, so-called answers to this question, this problem, this puzzle. Why you cannot, for example, why you cannot extend your legs without sitting, for example,
Mm-hmm.
at a physical level? There's a clue there in that question.
So that's the nature of the design.
Yeah, okay, you're somewhat closer. That is the inherent nature of the design of the variant, invariant, intentionality, linkage, orbit network of the very human system, which human beings did not create.
Yes.
Like Anuradha said, the language is artificial because it is created by human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So
So that logic inside you,
so
that is the
because
logic of the nature process.
hmm,
That's the logic of every cell. That's the logic of every gland. That's the logic of every sense organ. So what is that logic? So
so
how this question? Questions create the answer. The entire nucleus invariant of creativity is actually having questions. Having question is just a very general statement. That means having attentions directed to something which is yet unclear. A question is a direction for attention. Language, of course, is an inefficient tool under the. Out of the 100% of languages being communicated by talking or by print, not even 10% of that is comprehended or retained. And that 100% of language is about just 1% of something.
Right.
A teacher talks for about 90 minutes. Some
Mm.
5 minutes of things are retained in the mind of the audience. But the student undergoes certain experience. That's all. If he or she was listening, he or she may not reproduce the same ideas in all its complete 340 sentences made in 60 minutes. So, in that case, now the question is, in order to comprehend one idea which can be talked in 1 minute, why there was 360 statements? What these 350 statements were doing? That's again a logic of language which you have to. That's not our purpose anyway. These are all sample curiosities and directions of attention you can apply when you get sufficient time later.
to create a man.
There are, let me tell you, we need to understand the truth of a great lot of things that are already there. Great lot of people are in search of the unknown. In fact, almost 90% of the known things are not properly understood.
Yeah.
Understood meaning there is no clear linkage between the perception of the referent and the actual referent. In the sense that there is no perception of the hundreds of reality linkages to that referent, which that diagram shows. You see a pen and you use it, of course, but just as an example, you don't see the linkages of that pen with varied orbits of variance having their own intentionalities, existing in time past or present or future, existing in a certain logic. Is that clear?
Yeah.
And definitely you can see that, no doubt about that. In other words, normally people have linear perception, linear logic, linear thinking, one after the other. You need a network perception
Right.
because the reality or the so-called reference existing in a network.
Mm.
It is a truth,
Mm.
like the you.
Mm.
The right now you, your self perception is existing in a network of your role identity, your educational background, your experiential background, your personal history. Great lot of things are operating in the pre-conscious and the subconscious and then the non-conscious. That is, I told you, ordinary people do not have to bother about it, but you are all creative searchers. You want to know the subatomic particle level of the universe of the you. That's all.
Yes.
You want to know the physics and the chemistry and the biology and the botany and the mathematics and the engineering and the design and all that subjects of the very you, the universe of the you. Then you will understand the universe of everything also. Because you are a part of everything. When you know that, when you sense that, you will sense how inevitably, how invariantly you are engaged with every other variance in your surroundings in the world. What are the orbits of your attention? That invariant attention. It can go to what all orbits? Orbit number one, right now you can listen to my words, you understand.
Mm.
In that orbit number one, you are also your attention is actually assessing the way you sit there, the way your expressions are, the realities of the room, the people around, and all that. What is the second orbit of that attention? It is not operating. Can you focus that attention on the entire terrain there in your mind, if you are familiar? Can you expand your field of attention, projected attention to cover the possible probable size of this planet Earth? What are your orbits of observation? Let us say so. Attention to details, people say. Attention to details, not one after the other. That network attention, which is the requirement of a real manager or a real leader or a real mystic. That network attention meaning everything around in the home or in the office or in the surroundings will be within the field of your attention. It is easy to note something which is shown to you. Go and pick up that pen and come back. On the way, there are so many things which are out of order. The person does not see that. He just goes and takes the pen and comes back. When he is going to take the pen, he doesn't see that the papers are being distributed in a half-hazard way on the table. He doesn't see that an old used cup with the remaining of tea is also there. So that also could be picked up when he goes back. Because the attention is in its very close orbit, and you have to have a network attention, multiple orbit attention directed to your own entity. When you do that and when you sit down, that is called meditation. Your attention should cover your attention should embrace your totality of the entity. Sitting in that position is called zasan or sitting in meditation. Or that is the sitting in meditation. Try that. Otherwise, your attention is every time on one thing only. Then there is quick shifts in attention, quick that you don't know. That's a survival process. Everybody is doing that. What is required is in the same attention field, all these things should be there. It is possible. Try that. Just a matter of attention. And we can talk about observation, conceptualization, reflection, thinking, intellect, imagination, visualization, imagination. To to what orbits your imagination can proceed? To how many orbits? To what all linkages? To what all variants your visualization can proceed? See, these are the hundreds of some of the samples of the hundreds of questions you can ask when you grasp the referent and the referent reality of variant, invariant linkage, network, intentionality, orbits. When we talk about the referent of the word chair, what is the referent of that thing, anything in its linkage network with other variants having intentionalities according to a certain logic, operating in time, in different orbits. So, linkaging principle number one, logic, which is based on intentionality. Principle number two, time. And what is the next? What could be the third one? Or what could be any other one? Forget about third or fourth. For the words to get connected to form a sentence, there is a logic. And that connection is done by a person in a time. During a time. Then what another variable is operating?
Design setting
Of what?
of everything.
What you said,
Design
you have to
set,
connect with the focus of the question, Navin. Question
design
is,
setting of
so
the
when you
yeah.
say the third factor design setting,
Mm,
how do you explain that? Linkages should have a certain logic, which we right now, sometime back, we connected with that very logic of the human entity invariant. Okay. And linkaging happens in time, and though there are frozen linkages like that of a table, chair, etc., which also may get delinkaged over a period of time. You said the design setting. Come on, you said the point, important point. Come on, correct it. Why did you say that? Come on, what gave you the
the
idea that for
yeah,
linkage, first is logic, second is time, third is design setting? Why?
the way the things are arranged, whatever that is
No,
existing in the
that
nature
is
of process,
that is the logic.
logic. Uh,
Yeah, you are right, Naveen. That logic and time is according to a certain design setting.
yeah.
And where is the location of that design setting? That is in the invariant aspect of the one who is doing that linkaging.
Yes, right. Location. Locations, yeah.
Doing the making of a table, or doing the making of a speech, or doing the making of a piece of writing, or doing an expression. Now let us now go back to a slightly changed topic. In the design setting process of expressions, in responses, in behaviors, in activities, in ways of relationships. Everywhere this is applicable.
Yeah.
So the design setting of expression, when you are sitting in a board meeting, you see,
Yeah.
and the design of expression when you are sitting in a friendship meet after 20 years, see, or the design setting of your interaction with your wife, the design setting of your interaction with your sister, and the design setting of interaction with your daughter. All the three are females.
So is
Let
the
us say
context?
all the three are of comparable age and beautiful, etc., etc. But see the logic of linkaging. See the time factor involved in possible probable actions of linkaging. See,
Right.
but I wonder how did you say that? What made you conceive that it must be linkage to design setting, and what makes you doubtful about explaining that linkage? That's very interesting. So, this three factors you consider as the uh, sup, uh, uh, supportive framework of variant invariant linkage network orbit. Time
Right.
factor, that is why you have to choose a time for your prayer. For example, now you can understand how varied systems have come into the world. In order to engage with your boss, with your colleague, with your friend, with your sister, with your husband, with your wife, with your children, etc., etc., there is a time, there should be a consideration for the design setting of the meeting, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. We have to have a network thinking. All these things are to be thought and uh, created in clarity in your mind setting, in your understanding. Get
Yes.
the point?
Exactly. Yeah, sir. Yeah.
That's all. So I hope you have jotted down some notes and some diagrams.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. On a
Yeah.
Wednesday, this much
It's
of time
very,
is enough.
yeah,
Any
very
questions,
interesting,
Vinay?
sir.
Any more questions?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Hmm.
So I was as a third point, I was thinking about the process of linkaging.
Yeah, design setting. That will come. You're right. Actually, there are three factors. Design setting process. Yes. Yes.
Okay, okay, okay.
And a process, I left it because we'll be discussing in detail about process. This is no, Vinay, this is not like our sessions and our topics are not just like lessons in a textbook. All
Yes,
these
sir.
three spokes are there, but all these three are interlinked by the hub as well as the rim. So on every appropriate occasion, I am connecting with the rim, sometimes connecting with the hub. You know,
Yes.
that's the only way this wheel can be rolled. That is why. I cannot finish a chapter on referent and then second chapter on referent reality and then the third chapter on creative analysis and then the chapter on variant, etc. All these are to be talked at the same time in a very intelligent way, introducing certain things in between, then expanding it at later point of time. See,
Yes.
in between today I said the design setting process, but I did not focus on that, but you caught on that. Yeah, it is design setting process. Process perspective itself is very huge. To see the entire universe as an ongoing process, an ever ongoing continuous process. But the invariant logic of the human being, which is basically controlled by the invariant fear and anxiety, is controllingly insisting stationariness. That's why I am reconsidering writing the book. So I am naming it Nature Process Leadership. But I have to write a lot. Why should I write to convince people about this? But that
Yes.
is ultimate. It is the ultimate. Therefore, I am trying to get a mood to write. It is not natural leadership. It is nature process leadership because every blade of grass, every subatomic particle, every rain, every fog, every mountain, every river, everything is in continuous process only. Some process we call flow, some process we call air, some process we call matter, some process we call fire, some process we call space, some process we call expression, some process we call responses, some process we call behavior, some process we call activities, some process we call ways of relationship, some process we call talking. The moment the cellular process in this body in this configuration is almost weak, then it is another process of death. And if the body is buried in the ground, it will undergo another process of decaying, and then another process of merging with the soil and dirt and whatever it is. Our continuous process happening in a setting of a design. Yes, Vinay. Comprising variance and invariance and their linkages with the different intentionalities or logics of intentionalities. Now you have to see all this together. Get the point, Vinay? You have to get all this together.
Yes.
You, normally you kiss a person. Now you have to totally embrace the person and kiss. You have to embrace the totality of all these things. And then with once you get that totality with a few projections and few visualizations, especially when you go to sleep or when you get free time sitting alone, or when you write down some examples in a project, a personal project book, within some time you will definitely get very good control. Nothing is inaccessible to your intellect. Okay? Nothing is.
Yes.
So embrace this totality, and then you will be able to embrace the very world around.
Exact.
Then you become so expanded, you become so dissolved in the environment. You will no more be contained in the strongly sensed boundaries of your little body. And one day you will be able to see that invariant aspect
You.
which is constantly engaging with the variations in different orbits through their unique logics of linkages in that design setting and ongoing process of your entity. of your body, of your mind, of your intellect, and of your spirit, or the totality called the entity. The currently perceived invariant is the normal self, that normal consciousness. Even that is a variant induced by that original invariant in you.
Yes.
So there is an orbit network of that original invariant, okay,
Mm.
which is giving rise to the subvariant structure of your body,
Mm.
in which we see also the subvariant structure of the mind,
Right.
also the subvariant structure of your so-called engines of attention, perception, thinking, conceptualization, etc. Altogether forming the
Mm.
first orbit, altogether forming the first orbit.
Yes.
And each of this is getting connected outside in your expressions, in your responses, in your behaviors, in your
Mm.
activities or actions, in your ways of relationships, and in your expression, I mean in your communication or your language. Thought language or ongoing language of your stream of consciousness or your
Mm.
spoken language. Okay, and through that expressions, responses, behaviors,
Mm.
actions, ways of relationships, and
Mm.
overall language. Okay, you are
Mm.
you are you are engaging with objects, people, things, events, ongoing, whatever developmental variants happening according to a certain logic.
Yeah.
So right now this induced uh, some some beating around the bush
Mm.
is the self of you, that so-called I. What is the
Mm.
referent of that I? Right now, what is trying to locate that referent of the I? That which is trying to locate the referent of the I is that original.
Consciousness.
That which is aware of consciousness is that original invariant.
Mm.
That
Exactly.
centermost point, which is
Mm.
aware of all this, which is aware that
Mm.
you are conscious, which is aware of yourself, which is making the word I, which is making the word my, me, etc. This this too is existing in in time.
Mm.
This exists only in time. It is ongoing with all these things. That's why it is
Mm.
aware of whatsoever is going on.
Mm. Right.
So try to locate that.
Right, sir.
Yeah.
Mm.
Try the master tool, the master engine, the master engine is the engine of your attention, the power of your
Mm.
attention. That is the only thing. That is the only support.
Mm.
I would say the entire universe is nothing but a field of attention.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because attention is that only energy field accessible or ever present everywhere. Attention is ever present everywhere. That's why you are able to see, able to notice, able to sense everything around. So the same attention. But of course, when you do that, again, who is or what is directing that attention to locate that which is directing the attention?
Yes. Yes. Great.
Got it?
Mm-hmm.
That is why it is called a gateless gate. Because
Mm.
this attention, what I am telling now is your attention should have that capacity to locate that which is directing it to locate that.
Right now. Mm-hmm. Mm.
That is why the gateless gate.
Exactly.
And you try for some time and then you just
Mm-hmm.
stop it. Again you
Mm-hmm.
try for some time just to drop it.
Mm-hmm.
And in between that dropping, it
Mm-hmm.
will it will just show up. It will never happen when you do it. Why?
Mm.
Because that doing of driving attention is done by some kind of a consciousness of you. So long as you do it, that consciousness is having a
Mm.
role, which is not a
Yeah.
part of the original invariant, which is
Oh.
not a part of the that which is generating attention. So
Mm.
do it for some time, achieve a
Mm.
certain speed, then stop it.
Mm. Okay. Then the aha
Then it may
experience.
then it may chance to pop up in your
Mm.
so-called in that split second gap, you will see the running horse, or that running horse will become visible to you, no doubt, one day. Because I have driven your sensitivities to that level, so it must happen one day.
Yes.
But you should be anticipating it. Then only you will try for that. Once in a while. Just like that. Take a sudden glance.
Mm.
And just to trust. Just leave it to your something else. Let it take care of it. Have a ethical, uh, good, positive, innocent uh, hope for that. And there are certain every time you try for this, that much you are exercising the engine of attention at its finest speed, or finest capacity, or finest sharpness. That itself will be of advantage for you, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, like
Mm-hmm.
you are trying to throw stones on a mango tree, never it happens. But one day you really need a mango, you just throw a stone and it comes to you. So that much of exercise is always good. Like that parable by Vinay, As a boy, I was familiar with the rivers. As during my adolescent times, I was familiar with what you call what
Dry land.
dry land also. So at a certain point of time when it is required, it has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Provided your personal history, provided the design setting process diagram of the you is intact,
Mm.
is not what you call made weak by uh, illogical linkages.
Yes.
illogical linkages of greed or other motivations or desires or hatred or manipulations and so on and so forth. Like you differentiate the illogic of wrong syntax of a sentence, on which Anuradha or Nitya made a point. Unless you know it, how can you? Yes, very true.
Yes.
At this level of the language of the entity, at this level of the language of the existence of entity, it is not easy to understand the errors of logic. You know, that's why
Yes.
people do unethical things. They talk
Yeah.
something there, Satyameva Jayade, and do wrong things here. They pretend love to somebody who, and that person she hates, and all kinds of illogical structures are existing, and they're all just like that, somehow incorporated, somehow put into the lock package. So when you talk about a genius himself, it is a mystic individual. A mystic individual is a mystic individual is a mystic individual. Absolutely truthful and absolute, what you call, epitome of ethics. You are at the level of Krishna or Parvati or Shiva or whoever. When that's all by way of examples. Just example. You be the way you is. But you be clear about the logic of what is right and wrong, what is correct and incorrect, what is good and bad. That's all. Which your sensitivity must tell you by this time. That is, of course, a requirement of the design setting process, so that the logic will operate correctly, so that your attention will one day get hold of that which is doing all this, which is located beyond the gateless gate. I
Great.
wanted to finish this aspect of logic, time, and design setting process of invariant, variant, linkage, intentionality, orbit, network.
Network.
That's all.
Good.
So that is why when the woodcutter was disturbed by, let us look at the example of disturbed by an unethical entity, capability tried to chase it away. It did not work. He was defeated, and he had to tolerate that injustice. But then what happened? How could that iron blade fixed so tightly on the larger end of the handle can slip away? That blade just cannot slip out of that portion, because that wood is, wood is
Yeah.
Only
tapered,
fixed.
tapered
Mm-hmm.
at the larger at the end of it, where the circle of that thing is fixed onto it, pressurizing it through the leaner end. Same, it was the intent of the axe. The woodcutter used his intent to chase away the animal using that tool of the axe, and he failed using the intentionality of the axe. It failed because such a powerful intent, such a pure and therefore powerful intent. So that human intent got transferred into that axe, and that axe was moving till then to chase away the animal. Get the point, Nitya?
Right, sir.
Like I talked about the gateless gate, your attention gets some practice in chasing that gateless gate, that animal. The axe of attention tries once in a while its best to get that. It doesn't come. Okay, leave it. But your every attempt of doing that, the acts, that acts of attention itself gets a kind of a logic, a momentum. So at the most unexpected time, definitely it will never be the expected time. Because expectation is by consciousness, by a mindset.
Sir.
So that will happen 100% only at the so-called unexpected time. It is unexpected because there is no element in the variant network of your mind or awareness or consciousness or your desire to get it. With that desire, you have been trying the acts of attention, nothing happened.
Right.
So that is gone out. Then that intent will be taken over by the acts of soul.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So much to think, so much to
Yeah,
reflect on.
great.
Yes. Bye bye.
Great.
Good night.
Thank you.
Vinay,
Good night.
Nitya,
Good
Thank you,
night,
sir.
Naveen,
sir.
Good night.
Anuradha, Ramesh,
Bye.
Amey,
Yeah.
Rajrishi, and Mandra Rishika. Bye bye. Good night.